Welcome back to the Bit Beacon broadcast. Today we have for you episode 084. It's May 27, 2025. You can call me Kodax and I'll be your host through this week's broadcast. Today is the 39th anniversary of the original release of Dragon Quest on the Famicom in Japan. And for a few years now, it has been celebrated as Dragon Quest Day. So I just want to wish all of you a very happy Dragon Quest Day to you all. So after a couple weeks of no new games arriving, I have a plethora of games that showed up this last week. So I'm going to quickly run through these three titles here. First up is a game I had been meaning to pick up, but was kind of waiting for a sale because this game called Despair Drops for Nintendo Switch, published by Axis Games. I don't know who the actual developer is, D3 Publisher maybe, or Red Entertainment. I'm not sure off the top of my head if either of those are the developer, just like the original publisher in Japan. But this is a visual novel style game. It's from the perspective of a female character, and it's got kind of a dating simulator element to it, where there's, a bunch of handsome dudes. So you might be wondering, why the heck are you buying this? I can't imagine that's something you'd really be interested in. And you're right, it's not really my typical go-to. But it has character designs and features a gorgeous cover art from a famous character designer from Fire Emblem, Pokemon Go, and No More Heroes, of course, and the Somnium Files games. Yusuke Kozaki, who I happen to be max level friends with in Pokemon Go, just saying. So yeah, I wanted to pick up the edition that is sold exclusively on the Western publisher's website, Axis Games. It comes with, in addition to the retail game, packaged separately is a CD soundtrack, which also has a character artwork on the front here, and then a set of, it looks like about a dozen or so, maybe about 10 character cards featuring their height, their age, their hometown, and like a crime they're accused of or something like that. And these are bigger than like your average like Pokemon trading cards. So they're probably, 5 by 3 inches, something like that. They had a Memorial Day sale this past weekend. So I jumped on it. The bundle was like $25 off or $20 off. I can't remember. So I figured that's probably as good as it's ever going to get the online exclusive bundle with the extra little merchandise items. If Kozaki ever comes back to SoCal and I get the chance to meet him again, I do hope to, maybe get some of this signed. Okay, the next game I have on my docket to talk about is Megaton. This is another title from Limited Rare Games. They sort of spoof limited run games, and they do these very brief pre-order windows lasting only a couple hours, where if you weren't there, you're never going to be able to get this game, kind of a thing. They do end up on the aftermarket for, 2 or 3 times their retail value, or what they were initially sold to people at. I think I bought this one back in October or September, something like that. It features this really kind of freaky cover art, which I'm almost certain is AI generated. These guys are known for being basically putting out some of the worst games they can possibly put out on physical copies, which, it's an interesting method to go about. They're basically a joke publisher. But one thing that was particularly interesting is they developed this whole lore around the game. And the back here says, originally developed in 1994 by visionary game developer Takashi Furukawa. This exclusive Pippin console title was poised to revolutionize gaming with its stunning realism and gripping gameplay. And then it just kind of goes on. And that's all a bunch of BS. None of that is actually true. They just made all that up. They're kind of fun to follow along with and pick up their releases. This is their first release for PS5. Megaton. Probably would never recommend playing this. Okay, the last game I have here is an arrival from Limited Run Games. I don't think I talked about this, did I? Okay, so this is Castlevania Dominus Collection, the Classic Edition, available from Limited Run Games. I've talked about some of their Classic Editions previously for the different Castlevania collections. They come in an NES-style Konami silver box with some really nice artwork on the front. The titles included with this collection are Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow, Castlevania Portrait of Ruin, Castlevania Order of Ecclesia, and Haunted Castle Revisited. So Dominus is kind of a cheeky way of saying Nintendo DS. So these are the 3 Nintendo DS games brought and ported over to current consoles. I believe this is also available on PlayStation and Xbox as well. Haunted Castle Revisited, I believe, is an arcade Castlevania game that has been remade, remastered for just this collection and is only available as part of this collection. So that's kind of a cool bonus edition as well. Inside the Classic Edition, there's a soundtrack CD. There are the reversible cover arts for all 3 of the games, the main games featured. So you can swap out the artwork within each of the editions. And there is also a poster, I believe. I think there might be something else, but I'm not going to open this one right this very moment. I know I said that was the last game, but I actually do have another one. This right here is Penny's Big Breakaway. So this is a 3D platformer game. It's by Evening Star Games, and it's published by Private Division, but physically by Limited Run. It's the 120th release in their PlayStation 5 series of games. And Evening Star Games, you may not know their name, but they are the developers who made Sonic Mania. Going back a few years ago, and when Sega didn't want to follow up Sonic Mania with a new game, they basically abandoned ship, made their own studio, and started working on their own original IP. So Penny's Big Breakaway is the first of, presumably either a new series or, just the first of a new IP from them. I'm looking forward to actually opening this one and playing it. It has a pretty cool looking art style to it. In a lot of ways, it kind of reminds me of like a 3D Sonic a little bit. But there's enough interesting gameplay mechanics to separate itself from the Sonic series for sure. So last week, I had told you that I finished up with playing Clair Obscura Expedition 33. And, there's not a whole lot of time before I move on to Nintendo Switch 2 and some other games that are coming out soon. So I thought I would open up a game that has kind of been sitting on my to-be-played. This is actually a visual novel, Tales of Toyotoki. And it's a shorter one, is my understanding. I think I'm pretty close to the end at this point. But it's a very sweet story about a teenager who gets sent to live with his grandpa on this island in Okinawa, and he arrives and his grandpa is not there, so he basically breaks into his grandpa's house and just kind of settles in there, and he makes some friends and some other people come to live in the house, and it's kind of a silly, lighthearted story until this last kind of chapter of the game when it got kind of really mysterious and dark and kind of spooky. So yeah, it's just been an enjoyable read, and it's got some really nice character art by this character designer named Muji. Not a super well-known character designer. It took me quite a bit of work to find them online, their social media things. I wanted to see what other work they had done, and not very much. But yeah, I definitely enjoy the visual aesthetic of the game, and I look forward to seeing what they work on next. But yeah, I'm enjoying my time with Tales of Toyotoki. I'd recommend it to anyone who's a fan of visual novels and adventure games. It's definitely slice of lifey for a lot of it. I find that it plays really well in like 2-hour sessions or so, and then kind of taking a break. Otherwise, you might find yourself getting a little, I don't want to say bored, but sort of like, okay, let's move it. The game kind of starts off focused on 2 of the characters, and then kind of breaks off from those two characters and kind of looks at some of the side characters before refocusing near the end of the game on those two characters again. So I'm now at that part, and I'm kind of glad to be back with the focus being on those two characters again. But yeah, Tales from Toyotoki, I recommend it. Seems like a quick read compared to a lot of visual novels, which can go for 50, 60, 70 hours, which is kind of crazy to think about, that you could be essentially reading for that long. They're big. They have a lot of words sometimes. So right now, things are kind of quiet in the world of video games. There's not a lot of major breaking news. We're sort of coming up on the former E3 time period where we expect to have a lot of announcements and things like that. So with that said, we've got IGN Live next weekend. We've got Summer Games Fest next Friday. I think that's the 6th. And then the same weekend as IGN Live here in LA, we've got the first stop on the Death Stranding World Tour, Hideo Kojima's new game. He's doing another world tour for the second game, which is arriving shortly. I think at the end of June, I think it's coming out. Anyways, for Death Stranding World Tour, there's been some debate whether Kojima would actually be here in LA for it, but he just this morning confirmed his attendance at the Summer Games Fest on Friday, so it's very likely that he'll be making an appearance on Sunday at his, the Death Stranding World Tour. So there's still no details on how to get into that event, but yeah, summer game season is about to blow up in a big way, and I expect we should be hearing from PlayStation, Nintendo soon about dates that they plan on doing their announcements. I think we'll hear maybe the week after Nintendo Switch 2 launches, we'll hear about a new Nintendo Direct. As for PlayStation, I'm not sure how close they're going to play their cards to their vest, but yeah, I suspect June we'll be hearing from all three major publishers. We already know that we're hearing from Xbox, I think in the middle of June, the week after next week, I want to say. So yeah, lots of news to come. In the meantime, I've got kind of one sort of humorous, sort of silly story, and then I've got kind of a rant about game key cards. So let's dive in. So Randy Pitchford, the co-founder and current president of Gearbox Software, best known for creating and developing the Borderlands series of games, has once again stepped in it. Randy is no stranger to controversy. If you want, you can Google Randy Pitchford Medieval Times USB to learn some interesting information about Randy. But this time, he pissed off his own customer base. Randy responded to the following post from a Borderlands fan. Randy, this game better not be $80. Don't take that risk. A lot of gamers aren't going to pay $80 and feed this notion of constant increases of the price tag. You are the CEO. You have some say with the price when it comes to your publisher. This fan is of course concerned about the rising cost of games and the recent appearance of $80 games thanks to Nintendo with the unveiling of Mario Kart World. This was Randy's response to that fan's post. He said, A, not my call. B, if you're a real fan, you'll find a way to make it happen. My local game store had Starflight for Sega Genesis for $80 in 1991 when I was just going out of high school working minimum wage at an ice cream parlor in Pismo Beach, and I found a way to make it happen. Wow, Randy, talk about a total lack of understanding. First, let's look at his point A, where he claims it's not his call. That is total BS. He is the president of the company, and he can't claim that he has no say in the final price of his game. Of course, Randy would love for Borderlands 4 to be more expensive. That would mean more money for him, as he most definitely gets kickbacks and bonuses depending on the financial performance of the game. His point B is multifaceted. First, he uses language like, real fans will find a way to make it happen, which puts an emotional weight on the decision for Borderlands fans to buy the new game. Pay up or face the facts that you're not a real fan, is what he's really saying. Then he goes on to say that back in the 90s, games were more expensive than they are now. And he slaved away at his minimum wage job to earn enough to buy that very expensive game. To be fair, he's right, games were really expensive in the 90s, especially the early 90s. But the overall cost of living in the early 90s? Massively less than what it is today. We are talking magnitudes less. Randy is an out-of-touch multimillionaire who thinks that gamers should sacrifice their ability to make ends meet and instead spend top dollar on his upcoming video game instead. He's clueless about the reality of the world right now. It's rough out there, Randy. Real rough. So the situation surrounding Nintendo Switch 2 game key cards is only getting worse as new games and ports for the console are being announced. As a reminder, game key cards are a new offering for game publishers on Nintendo Switch 2. Publishers can opt to use game key cards, which are physical game cards that do not contain any of the actual game data, but instead prompt the system to download the game over the internet onto your Nintendo Switch 2 memory. The game key card then needs to be inserted into your Nintendo Switch whenever you play that digitally downloaded game. So it gives the illusion of being a physical game, and on paper, sure, it's better than buying a digital game outright, but they still have all the problems a digital game has. Namely, what happens to your game when the servers go off in the future? Will these games work 20, 50, 100 years from now when Nintendo turns the servers off? The answer is no. But Taylor, won't you be dead in 100 years? Why do you care? I care because this stuff is important. These games should be playable until the end of civilization, and then some. Teams of people poured their heart and soul into these games, and represent a massive human achievement upon their completion. And now with Nintendo Switch 2, our options as consumers are being diminished by greedy publishers who would rather save a few dollars than offer games complete on cartridge and contribute towards having preserved builds of these games available physically. So where does that leave us? Gamers can buy games digitally or physically just like before. Except now when you buy a game physically for Nintendo Switch 2, there's a good chance that your physical game won't actually be a physical game, but instead a game key card. Let's take a look at all the games that have been announced for having a physical release thus far. We'll start with the games that we know are releasing on a traditional physical game card format. Again, all of this is for Nintendo Switch 2. We've got Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Super Mario Party Jamboree plus Jamboree TV, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Kirby and the Forgotten Land plus Star-Crossed Worlds, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar, Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma, Tamagotchi Plaza, Cyberpunk 2077, and Daemon X Machina Titanic Scion. As you can see, so far we only have 12 games that are releasing as true physical games, with 7 of these being published by Nintendo themselves. Kudos to Marvelous, Bandai Namco, and CD Projekt Red for actually releasing their games on cartridge. Marvelous has 3 games of the other 5 listed. Bandai Namco has 1 with Tamagotchi Plaza, which is only releasing physically in Japan. It's a digital-only release here in the West. And CD Projekt Red for releasing Cyberpunk, of course, completely on cartridge. So what about titles releasing on game key cards? It's more than twice as long as the previous list. Survival Kids, Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remastered, Hitman World of Assassination, Kunutsugami Path of the Goddess, Madden NFL 26, Nobunaga's Ambition Awakening Complete Edition, No Sleep for Konami Date from The Somnium Files, Puyo Puyo Tetris 2S, Raito Remastered, Sonic X Shadow Generations, Shrine Post Be Your Idol, Star Wars Outlaws Gold Edition, Street Fighter 6, Suikoden 1 and 2 HD Remaster, Wild Hearts, Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, East X Proud Nordics, Wizard Game, and Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D Remake. Third-party partners like Konami, Sega, Square Enix, Capcom, Ubisoft, EA, Spike Chunsoft, and Falcom are all opting for game key cards. That's basically a laundry list of almost every major third-party publisher. Square Enix just doubled down today with the announcement that Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D Remake would be coming to Nintendo Switch 2 physically, but of course it's as a game key card release. So now that means Bravely Default and Dragon Quest are now game key card releases. So why did this happen? Why would Nintendo shoot themselves in the foot and create a problem that didn't exist prior? Nintendo of America president Doug Bowser was recently asked about game key cards by IGN, and here's his response. In the immediate future, physical games are still a key part of our business, and we value our relationships in particular with our retailers, and want to make sure we have products available for them to sell to their consumers. When you look at game key cards, for us, our goal with Nintendo Switch 2, similar to what we were able to accomplish on Nintendo Switch, is to have the broadest and deepest library of content we possibly can, and that includes our publishing partners. And game key cards are a way that our publishing partners are able to bring more content onto the platform, deeper and larger, more immersive content on the platform. Well, Mr. Douglas Bowser, Nintendo's supposed plan has backfired dramatically. You say you want to bring bigger games to Nintendo Switch 2 with game key cards? None of these game key card releases even come close to needing the largest Nintendo Switch 2 game card. In fact, the only game that does need the large game card, Cyberpunk 2077, is actually releasing entirely on cart because CD Projekt Red are treating their customers fairly. Instead, these publishers just see dollar signs of savings with this new option you've presented them with and are passing the buck and the burden of storage onto the consumer. And along with it, the physical medium of video games has another nail in its coffin. Thankfully, Nintendo first-party published games will not be releasing as game key cards, and publishers like Marvelous are also committing to games on cartridges. Marvelous USA CEO Ken Berry had the following to say when speaking with RPG Site about why his branch of Marvelous is releasing new games, Rune Factory and Story of Seasons, on proper game cards. It has been very rewarding to see our titles mentioned as games that fans intend to purchase on Nintendo Switch 2, since they know we went with the full ROM game cards. It was not an easy decision, as it had to be made many months ago when things were very uncertain, and we were still learning about how the game key card option worked. But the more we found out about it, the more I thought our fans would much prefer the ROM option. He's talking about having the game on the cartridge. We wanted to go with the game on the cartridge version in our Switch 2 releases in the West, and thankfully the development team at Marvelous Japan obliged and thought, I'd love to say all Switch 2 releases from us in the future will go the full ROM route, but nothing is guaranteed. If our initial lineup sells well and we can make a clear association with it, the success being tied to the ROM on cart version, then that will greatly help our cause in the future. So you guys hear that? That's a call to action. Support traditional physical releases if you want to see them continue. If we reward publishers like Square Enix with sales of their fake physical games, then they will just release more and more and more of them as we go forward. But what about boutique publishers like Limited Run? How will they be handling their physical Switch 2 releases? Nintendo Life spoke with Limited Run co-founder Josh Fairhurst via email about this issue. Josh says if Limited Run is manufacturing the standard edition Switch 2 game, it will always use an actual cartridge. We have no plans to support game key card format on titles where we are the manufacturer and publisher. Well, that is reassuring. So any games part of their numbered releases will appear on a full and complete game card. I do wonder, though, if smaller games will be unable to sign with Limited Run moving forward, since they will most likely only be interested in games that they'll be able to justify the higher price tag of a proper game release. Physical game release. Nintendo Life also asked Limited Run if they're talking to any publishers who are releasing their games on game key cards, if they would be interested in doing proper physical game releases through Limited Run instead. Josh says, this is something that we are exploring and something I would like to do, but it's been a surprisingly difficult pitch so far. To illustrate why, there are a few notable games that have had mostly digital retail releases on the original Switch, and I tried to pitch two true physical releases for them. Unfortunately, there was a fear that any new release might make it difficult to move the older pre-existing retail stock. I think he's referring to like game codes in a box kind of releases. I've run into the same issue here. That doesn't mean I won't continue to try, though. I'm sure some partners will bite. So Nintendo creates problem, publishers make problem worse, and now consumers are going to have to rely on boutique physical game publishers to try and fix the problem. This really is the worst timeline and transmission.